On January the 5th, an article broke on Gizmodo claiming that Wizards of the Coast planned on updating their open game license, which has been in place for the last 23 years, to add a bunch of new terms and to do a bunch of new stuff. The open game license is the framework that allows third-party creators like myself to be able to use elements of D&D's core rules to publish our own material. It's what a huge part of the third-party scene has been built on for the last 23 years, including games like Pathfinder 1st Edition and many of the games that people currently play. Now, among the many bonkers things that Wizards wanted to do in the version 1.1 of this license, including starting to charge obscene royalties to companies earning over certain amounts, taking the rights to all work produced under the license, and a whole bunch of other shenanigans. The really big thing that they wanted to do is they wanted to make OGL 1.0A, which is the version that we've been using for the last 23 years, unauthorized. They essentially wanted to pull the rug from it and say you can't use this version anymore, you have to use our new version. It has been a very long week since then. Myself and countless people in the third-party publishing space have all kind of been in a holding pattern, waiting to hear an announcement from Wizards of the Coast, an announcement which at the time of recording still hasn't come, by the way, that would tell us what the hell is going on with this situation and what it means for the future of our businesses. During that time, everyone's been talking with each other about what the hell do we do going forward. A lot of people are moving away from 5th edition specific content. Some companies are making their own systems, other companies have opened up their own licenses, but we've all been kind of in a fugue state for the last week. But then last night, history repeated itself and Paizo stepped in. Paizo, the company behind the Pathfinder system, got their start in this space by publishing for D&D material under the open game license. The first version of their game, Pathfinder, was built entirely off the back of that SRD and the initial OGL. And then last night, they put out this statement. For the last several weeks, as rumors of Wizards of the Coast's new version of the open game license began circulating among publishers and on social media, gamers across the world have been asking what Paizo plans to do in light of concerns regarding Wizards of the Coast's rumored plan to deauthorize the existing OGL 1.0A. We've been awaiting further information, hoping that Wizards would realize that for more than 20 years, the OGL has been mutually beneficial and cannot and should not be revoked. And while we continue to wait for an answer from Wizards, we strongly feel that Paizo can no longer delay making our own feelings about the importance of the open gaming a part of the public discussion. We believe that the interpretation that the 1.0 or 1.0A OGL were introduced to be revocable or to be able to be deauthorized is incorrect, and with good reason. We were there.
Not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
Paizo owner Lisa Stevens and Paizo president Jim Butler were leaders on the D&D team at Wizards at the time. Brian Lewis, co-founder of Azora Law, the intellectual property firm that Paizo uses, was the attorney at Wizards who came up with the legal framework for the OGL itself. Paizo has also worked very closely on OGL-related issues with Ryan Dancy, the visionary who conceived the OGL in the first place. Paizo does not believe the OGL 1.0A can be deauthorized ever. While we are prepared to argue that point in a court of law if needed, we don't want to have to do that, and we know many of our fellow publishers are not in a position to do so. We have no interest whatsoever in Wizards' new OGL. Instead, we have a plan that we believe will irrevocably and unquestionably keep alive the spirit of the open gaming license. As Paizo has evolved, the parts of the OGL that we ourselves value have changed. When we needed to quickly bring out Pathfinder 1st Edition to continue publishing our most popular adventures back in 2008, using Wizards language was important and expeditious. But in our non-RPG products, including the Pathfinder Tales novels, Pathfinder Adventure card game, and others, we shifted our focus away from D&D tropes and leaned harder into ideas from our own writers. By the time we went to work on Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Wizards of the Coast open gaming content was significantly less important to us, and so our designers and developers wrote the new edition without using Wizards' copyrighted expressions of any game mechanics. That is important. While we still publish it under the OGL, the reason was no longer to allow Paizo to use Wizards' expression, but to allow other companies to use our expressions. We believe, as we always have, that open gaming makes games better, improves profitability for all involved, and enriches the community of gamers who participate in this amazing hobby. And so we invite the gamers around the world to join us to begin the next great chapter of open gaming with the release of a new open, perpetual, and irrevocable open RPG creative license otherwise known as Orc. The new Orc license will be built system agnostic for independent game publishers under the legal guidance of Azora Law, an intellectual property law firm that represents Paizo and several other game publishers. Paizo will pay for this legal work, and we invite game publishers worldwide to join us in support of this system agnostic license that allows all games to provide their own unique open rules reference documents that open up the individual game system to the world. To join the effort and provide feedback on drafts of the license, please sign up using this form. There'll be a link to that down in the description as well. In addition to Paizo, Cobalt Press, Chaosium, Green Ronin, Legendary Games, Rogue Genius Games, and a growing list of publishers have already agreed to participate in this open RPG creative license, and in the coming days we hope to expand to add substantially to this group. The Orc will not be owned by Paizo, nor will it be owned by any company who makes money publishing RPGs. Azora Law's ownership of the process and stewardship should provide a safe harbour against any company being bought, sold, or changing management in the future and attempting to rescind the rights or nullify sections of the license. Ultimately, we plan to find a non-profit with a history of open source values to own this license, such as the Linux Foundation. Of course, Paizo plans to continue publishing Pathfinder and Starfinder even as we move away from the open gaming license. Since months worth of products are still at the printer, you'll see the familiar 1.0A OGL in the back of our products for a while yet. While the Open RPG Creative License is being finalised though, we'll be printing Pathfinder and Starfinder products without any license, and we'll add the finished license to those products when the new license is complete. We hope that you'll continue to support Paizo and other game publishers in this difficult time for the entire hobby. You can do your part by supporting many of the companies that have provided content under the OGL, support Pathfinder and Starfinder by visiting your local game store, subscribe to Pathfinder and Starfinder, all by taking advantage of the discount code OpenGaming during checkout for a 25% off your purchase of the core rulebook, the core rulebook pocket edition, or the Pathfinder beginner box. Support Cobalt Press, Green Ronin, Legendary Games, Roll for Combat, Rogue Genesis Games, and other publishers working to preserve a prosperous future for open gaming that's both perpetual and irrevocable. We'll be there at your side. You can count on us not to go back on our word forever. Paizo Inc. Holy this is big. So for the last week, while we've all been kind of freaking out and losing our minds and worrying what this means for the future of our business, a lot of people have had a pie in the sky dream that Paizo and Cobalt Press and Green Ronin and all of these big publishers would band together to work on something to kind of take on the dragon, and here it is. The Orc license. This is massive news and a full-on repeat of history. Back in 4th edition, Wizards tried to close off their gaming license. They moved away from what people were comfortable with. Paizo swooped in to fill that gap with Pathfinder 1st edition and reached incredible success for it. Now, Wizards are trying to close off the 1.0 OGL that we've been using for the last 23 years, and Paizo and the rest of the big TTRPG companies in the third-party space are moving in to say, you know what? We don't need you anymore. I hope that whichever executive suit, whichever monopoly man at Wizards is ultimately responsible for them trying to do this, is sitting in a little cubicle somewhere, sweating bullets and losing sleep because Wizards have whacked up. By sending out a whole bunch of NDAs and hoping to rope in a bunch of creators and companies before this going live, they were hoping they'd be able to just be like, here is the new situation, deal with it. And instead, what they've had is seemingly the entire TTRPG community rally against them. They hoped to dominate the market and turn it into a monopoly for themselves, and they've just thrown themselves off the edge and into Mount Doom. In terms of what this means for me and Icarus Games and this channel and Patreon and SideQuest and all of that stuff, a couple things. In terms of the channel, not a huge amount is going to change immediately. I am not covering 5th edition releases or anything that Wizards puts money into anymore. I've already announced that. I'm going to be covering significantly more Pathfinder, and I've got a bunch of other games that I would like to start covering as well. In terms of SideQuest, I posted over on Patreon last week to let people know that there'd be no more 5th edition content for the time being until we knew what the situation was. I don't see that changing. I don't see us going back to 5th edition content now. I imagine that we're going to be system agnostic, Pathfinder 2nd edition, and then as soon as these Orc licenses start dropping, we'll see what the landscape looks like for other systems as well. That said, we've still not heard anything official from Wizards of the Coast. As of the time of recording, I'm well aware that they could maybe release something between now and when this video goes live, so I'll leave a link in the pinned comment to any addition they make. But really, unless they just turn around and say, we're not doing anything. We're just leaving it the way it is. We're really sorry. We messed up. I don't see how they walk back from this. I don't see a situation where this doesn't do incredible damage both to the public perception of their brand and also their bottom line, because a lot of people, rightly so, are cancelling their D&D Beyond subscriptions, which if you are comfortable doing that, you should absolutely do. People are selling their Hasbro stocks and letting Wizards know how they feel in a respectful and non-threatening way. Of course, we don't send threats to people. If you've been soured on 5e by this whole thing and want to check out a new game, maybe Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I have a bunch of videos on that. Check this one out, which compares some of the biggest differences between 5e and Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And until next time, happy gaming.